that credit agencies, that international loan dispersal systems, the IMF, etc., depend on this interconnected global world. And debt ceilings, interests and loans and investments are decided based on political stability, and democracy is one of the values that are considered part of such decision making. If you haven't joined me before, my name is Sagarika. Welcome to A Questioning Mind, where I discuss all things policy and culture. Today we're discussing democracy and democracy indices. Democracy has come to mean many things over the years. It is due to the cultural and economic hegemony that is dictated by Western nations. But at its core, it has always meant one thing and one thing alone: self-governance. Governance of the people, by the people, for the people. Still, it has been twisted to mean many things, one of many values of a global world order and things like that. And very often these values are discarded as soon as they become inconvenient to reigning powers. I've recently written an article for First Post, which is one of the bigger digital publications in India, regarding democracy indices and the kind of parameters that need to be included for a democracy index to be truly valuable in gauging the level of democracy in a nation. Now, this is one of two videos where I will be discussing some of the ideas that I put forward in that article, which was very well received actually. In this part, we will be discussing the kind of people that are involved in the creation of these indices and the kind of people who are involved in dispersing knowledge about such projects. There are two kinds of people that are against the creation of such a project, that is, of India and Indian institutions taking up the causes of deciding upon a democracy index. Now, this can be split into two parts. These people can be split into two groups, like I mentioned, and one of these people believes that the West is very used to creating these indices. They have superior scholarship, they have better resources to measure, but most importantly, they have the expertise to gauge the world. Now, this is a cohort which basically decides that there is a sort of supremacism that is warranted for the Western powers. They do not realize that it is due to the economic, military, cultural, political hegemony that Western nations have held over the rest of the world, and thus that decision making will be biased towards certain nations that do follow their interests, or they deliberately wish for such a project to be continued where the Western powers decide how democratic other nations are and however inaccurate and illogical these projects are deemed by actual experts with expertise and experience in democratic projects. These are considered the gold standard merely because they come out of Western nations such as Sweden. The other cohort of people, the other group of people who believe that such a project is unnecessary, are very well intentioned but slightly supremacist in their own take. They just believe that such a project is unnecessary because it plays into Western propaganda. Now, there are many reasons that this is untrue, and one of the foremost economic minds of this country, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, has also spoken about this repeatedly, that such a project is actually necessary because these indices provide the base of a lot of ratings that credit agencies, that international loan dispersal systems, the IMF, etc., depend on. This world is an interconnected global world, and debt ceilings, interests and loans and investments are decided based on political stability, and democracy is one of the values that are considered part of such decision making. And as such, it plays an incredibly role in deciding the growth of nations. And so such a project is actually necessary. Now, the first group can essentially be disregarded for some reasons because they genuinely do not believe that the citizens of a nation such as India, which is a leader of the global south, deserves a place in deciding how democratic other nations are. They just genuinely believe that the handpicked experts that speak the words of the State Department, of other vested interests, are the only people that must be listened to, because they even welcome foreign interference in Indian policy making, even Indian elections. Just because things do not go a certain way, they form part of a global elite that would perhaps like to determine the way of a nation, the way of a growing nation, the way of the world in a certain way. Or they form part of a global elite that want to decide how nations and the world progresses and the standing of such nations in the world order. Now, these are not the kind of people who have the well-being of Indian citizens at heart. They welcome foreign interference, and if one does not realize India is a post-colonial nation of hardly just over 75 years of independence, which means that at least the Indian government itself is aware of how foreign interference played a role in colonialization. And this is something that those who want foreign interference today would like to forget, would like the citizenry of India to forget. But it is something that we carry in our blood, we carry as part of our identities. Those scars don't fade easy, as they shouldn't. And so it is necessary that their interference, their decision making not be taken too seriously, because if it is not Indian in nature. And the decision of what countries constitute better democracies can be Indian, can be global, but should be fair. And so we will disregard the views of the first group. Of the second group, though, this is a group that needs education. This is a group that needs to understand how credit rating agencies work, how random indices like even ESG has been made part of such ratings, and how, whether true or not, these rankings matter. So it is necessary to have control of what these rankings actually mean and what they're decided upon. What India and Indians who undertake this project can do is decide upon parameters that are very transparent, that have data, that use data and modeling, statistical modeling, that actually is transparent enough to not leave any scope for doubt. Because a lot of the data is currently available or can be modeled based on pre-existing data sets. And these are some of the parameters that I have mentioned in my article. If you haven't read it, if you've missed it, I have linked to that article down below, and you can leave your thoughts in the comments about it. I will be explaining these parameters, and some of these are incredibly easy and obvious, and stick around for that in the next video. Thank you for joining me on this short discussion. If you find value in such a discussion, if you have any thoughts on the matter yourself, please leave me a comment down below, and I hope you read my article and follow me on Twitter, where I make some of these thoughts public, and well, I'd love to interact with you on these platforms. So drop me a comment, share this video if you found value, and I'll see you in a few days. Thank you.